الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على الرسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم ما بعد فنسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى التوفيق والهداية وأن يصلح لسانه وقلبه إن شاء الله تبارك وتعالى. Ask Allah for guidance and He corrects my tongue and my heart, inshallah ta'ala, and makes me okay in my attempt tonight. Inshallah ta'ala, this is supposed to be our night as we were before Ramadan doing fiqh on this night. Actually an extension from the class before at the big masjid, the big mosque. And we wanted to handle tahara, salah. These are very important. A person might say, oh, salah, I know salah. Or a person might say, I've been born Muslim. A person might say, I've been Muslim 25, 30 years. You're talking about salah. But Allah Ta'ala ordered us for the salah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَقُومُ لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Stand before Allah. Here the standing means in salah. Doesn't mean just stand like you stand on the corner. He was talking about salah in the beginning of the verse when it said, حَافِظُ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِ. Preserve the prayer. Here preserve means time, all of the conditions tied to it, those things inside the salah that are from the pillars and obligations and so forth. And then Allah said, وَقُمُ لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, and stand in that fashion in salah to your Lord in obedience. One of the aspects of obedience here, when we talk about the salah, is the tahara. Because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, بَلَ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ يقول في كتاب الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة. Here Allah says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the top of the page, the 6th ayah, O you who believe. And we mentioned many times in the lessons before, O you who believe, it has some benefit to it. Just like O you people. And the benefit of O you who believe, Abdullah ibn Abbas, or the Prophet named Jummu'ah al-Quran, the one that explains the Quran, the one that the Prophet ﷺ hugged when he was a little boy and asked Allah to give him fiqh ad-din, give him understanding of the deen. That same young boy who grew up in the company of the elder Sahaba, scholar of the tafsir from the Sahaba, Abdullah ibn Abbas, the son of Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, the nephew of the Prophet. He said, whenever you hear Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, this Ya here, harf tanbih, it's in the Arabic language called a article that you use to make something noticed or announced, or to make someone give you their attention. So the statement Ya is one statement. Then you have Ayu, and then you have Alladhina Amanu, and all of those show emphasis on the believers. Therefore, Abdullah ibn Abbas said, when you hear Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, know that either Allah is going to make something compulsory upon you, or to make something prohibited upon you, so pay close attention. When you hear Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, it's like somebody calling your name. Pay close attention. Because either Allah is going to, after that, tell you to do something or tell you not to do something. Here Allah said, إِذَا كُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. In the Arabic language, one of the issues of balagha, the eloquency of the Quran and the balagha here means deep meanings inside of some of the words and phrases that are more than just Arabic. It's like a special chapter of Arabic, balagha. And it's all through the Quran. I'll give a couple examples if I can, bismillah. This is one of them where Allah say, إِذَا كُنْتُمْ. Either when you want to, or when you attempt, like Allah say, إِذَا جَاءَ, when comes. So إِذَا كُنْتُمْ. كُنْتُمْ is fi'l wal fa'il. It's a person doing the action and the action all in one word. From the word qama yakumu. Qama, he stood. Yakumu, he's standing now. Qama, past tense verb. Yakumu, he's standing, present tense. Mudari, present tense, he's doing it now. Allah said, إِذَا كُنْتُمْ, when you have stood, فَاغْسِلُوا وَجُوهَكُمْ, wash your faces. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, wash your hand up to the elbow. وَامْسُحُوا بِرَؤُوسِكُمْ, wipe your heads, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, and the foot up to the ankle. A person might ask, but how is it that you can stand, as Allah said, إِذَا كُمْتُمْ? When you have stood, then does it make sense to anybody? Wash your face, your hand up to the elbow, to the end of the verse? No, because this is a prerequisite of the salah. As the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, and the hadith which is in Sahih Muslim on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar, لا يقبل الله صلاة لا إذا حدث أحدكم لا يقبل الله صلاة حتى يتوضأ أو كما قال. When one of you breaks his purification. So this, in the first part of the hadith, shows that there's some purification, because you can't break something that you don't have a purification. So the Prophet said, when one of you breaks his purification, and here this means, as the scholars say, hatath al-asghar, the minor impurities such as urination, defecation, breaking wind, like this. When one of you make an act like that, Allah does not accept your salah until you make what they say ablution, wudu. So likewise, Allah is saying similarly when you have stood, but in the balagha of the Quran, the balagha of the Arabic language, the poetry and the deep meaning, how words are used, but they mean something else. The scholars say, إِذَا كُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when you have stood to pray, means إِذَا أَرَادَ أَنْتَكُمْ, when you intend on standing for salah. But Allah addressed it as if you did that first, and then you perform ablution. So the point here is that when we talk about the issue of salah, many of the scholars, when they write their books, before they get to salah, they purposely do tahara. Why? Because you can't make salah without the purification. By default, you have to talk about purification before you go into salah. Except in some cases, there are exceptions. So we want to, inshallah, nothing lengthy and big, but in a simple, summarized way, talk about the purification, such as wudu, such as washing partially the body, ghusl, washing the body fully. Because some people, they will go to make ghusl and he has head and shoulders, he has dal, soap. And that's lughatan in the language ghusl. But we're talking about shar'an, a religious injunction to wash. It's a certain way. And the Prophet mentioned that which changes the color, that which changes the smell or the taste, that water can't be used for purification. So while a person is using dal, whatever soaps he likes and smell good, then he get out and said, I make ghusl. He didn't make the ghusl for salah. So these things are important. But inshallah ta'ala, we wanted to tonight, as they say, give a rain check and talk about something that was tied to the khutbah, inshallah ta'ala. And we hope that Allah gives us the guidance, the time, and the help in dealing with the issues of fiqh salah or fiqh tahara like this, bi'idhnillah, in the upcoming future. One of the things we mentioned, the khutbah, that we want to talk about is the guidance. Every human knowing and feeling that she can't do anything without Allah's guidance. We have to, as humans, as Muslims, have that in us and understand that, because this in itself is a part of ubudiyyah. It's a part of your servitude to Allah. It's a part of the tawheed, submission to Allah, that you yourself believe, understand, and feel, I am nothing compared to Allah. To my Lord, I am like insignificant, and without His guidance, I am ruined. Whether it's guidance in the religion, whether it's guidance in the everyday life, this is a part of the aqidah, belief of the Muslims, part of the manhaj, methodology of the Muslims. This is a part of the psychology of the Quran, the way that Allah shows us and teaches us we should think. This is the way of the sunnah of the messenger and the way of the tabi'een and the sahaba that were those who came in the time of the Prophet. When we mentioned that in the khutbah, one of the things that we can relate to is the statement, Iyaka na'abudu wa iyaka nasta'in. And every Muslim, whether he or she says it proficient or not, they have to understand this. As many times when we talk about Quran, unfortunately, most of the world today, the focus is ajr, hasanat. And this is one portion of reading the Quran. How well you read it without mistakes, flawless in your pronunciation, and you get so many rewards for each letter is a big part of Quran. But the bigger part, the most important part, is tadabbur, is to be able to read and to ponder, reflect on the verse of Allah Ta'ala. And you can't do that without proper understanding. And this is why many of the scholars of the past have talked against memorizing the Quran for hifz, for memory alone, without memorizing it for tadabbur, for understanding and pondering upon the Quran. So when we take Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, every Muslim has to read that. A little boy whose salat is not on him has the obligation. He's taught 3 years old. And when he says it, you say, MashaAllah. You give him a kiss. As the Prophet used to kiss the children. Because he recited Al-Fatiha. And that Fatiha, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. This last part goes with the first part. Iyaka na'budu wa. Iyaka is the issue, again, of balagha. The poetry, the rich essence in the Quran. No other style is like this. And Allah did this to show that He was the creator, that the Prophet was the messenger, and to challenge those great poets in the time of the Prophet, showing, belittling them, although they were the most proficient, skilled in the language in that time. Na'budu, clearly in a simple translation, na'budu, we worship. Wa iyaka, iyaka comes the second time, and then we have nasta'in, we depend on. So in the beginning, iyaka, normally in Arabic, you wouldn't mention iyaka like that. You would mention Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in the end. But here, Allah is mentioned as a pronoun and also in the balagha form, iyaka. That ka, you're talking as if you're talking to Allah in a conversation. Meaning you, with emphasis. Oh, you, only you. And the scholar said that iyaka na'budu, only you we worship. Wa iyaka nasta'in, and only you we seek help from, is a part of this issue of the guidance. That if Allah does not give you aid, you won't be able to worship Allah.
And even if you worship Allah and He doesn't give you aid, you'll worship Allah in error. You'll worship Allah on some perception of something that you think is right and it's not right. Or you'll worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making partners with Him, thinking that it's not partners. So this iyaka, as Imam Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, he mentioned, iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. Iyaka, to you, O you Allah. Na'budu, we worship. You alone we worship. Wa iyaka, and you alone nasta'een, we seek assistance. So this last part, seeking assistance, goes with the na'budu, the worship. In a particular way, specific to worship, and that nasta'een, we seek your assistance, is also general in everything. And he said the meaning of iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een is la na'budu illa Allah, or la na'budu illa iyaka. Normally iyaka comes last, but Allah put iyaka first when He revealed it to show absolutely there is no other way except this way. That we have to worship you alone we worship, and you alone absolutely we seek your aid. But how many people understand that when they recite Al-Fatiha? This is not an issue of self-sufficiency. This is an issue purely of Allah guiding you and giving you aid all across the board. So today when we mentioned the guidance and the khutbah, the different types of guidance, we had mentioned the type that's given to the prophets and messengers. And of course their guidance is not like the guidance that we get. That's why they have rasul, they are like firm, and they have tabut. They really have that forbearance in good times and bad times, because they have no doubt in the affair. Their surety is so strong that it strengthens them in a way that's what most people would say abnormal or unhuman. And then you have the general guidance that Allah has given for everyone. We say common sense. But this is not something you're born with and you have. This is the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you. As the baby comes out not knowing anything. And Allah mentioned that. You came out, la ya'lamuna shay'a. So where's the common sense that automatically you gain and you know this? There's no such thing. No, Allah, He guides you through the life, through experiences, through your parents, through interaction, and you learn these things commonly. But this is a type of guidance. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned many places this issue of the guidance in His book. And then you have the guidance we had mentioned after you have been guided by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to Islam, as Allah told the Prophet about his uncle, Abi Talib. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. It is not you who guides the one who you love, because that's natural. The one that you love, even in your error, if you think you're right, you want them to follow you on that, because you deem it to be guidance. Allah told the Prophet, it is not you who guides the one who you love, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. But rather it's Allah, He guides whoever He wills. It's Allah's choice, not yours, O Muhammad. Alayhi salatu wasalam. So on that issue of that guidance, for everyone, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has laid the guidance. It's for you to choose or not choose. Then you have the one when Allah Azza wa Jal chooses to guide you. You come to Islam. That choosing and not choosing is also part of Allah's guidance. He guides you to choose, to see this is what to choose. Now you're Muslim. Why do we keep saying in Al-Fatiha, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim? And there's some narrations that the Sahaba used to read this word, as-sirat bil-sad was-sin, wa mahna wahid. We used to read it, bil-sad was-sin, wa ma'na wahid. And the meaning is equal. If you say sirat or sirat. They used to read it both ways. It was revealed like that. And the meaning is the same. Unlike in salah, if a person is saying salah, like as in the adhan and the qama, you hear many people, the common mistake. Hayya ala salah with the sin. Then this is different. The word salah means weaponry. You have to make sure that you're saying salah. But in the case of sirat in the Quran, or sirat with a sin or a sword, they're both equally okay, revealed, and the meaning is the same. This ihdina sirat al-mustaqim is a humbling factor. It should be for the Muslim. That you accepted Islam, you have no doubt Islam is what's correct. You believe in Allah, you believe in His messengers, you believe in His angels, you believe in the last day, you believe in the good and the bad of the decree, but it's not enough. You still need that guidance at every moment. And this is from the mercy of Allah that He commanded us to beg Him for that mercy. And then He showed us what that mercy is in that straight way. And asking Allah. And you're asking Allah in the way that in Arabic this is yani fil amr. You are commanding. It's not like you command your son, give me that book over there, Abdullah. Ya Amatullah, bring me my ni'al, bring me my son. It's not like that. When you command Allah, firstly, who's greater? You or Allah? Who's greater? The human or his Lord? His Lord. When we talk about the parent and the child, if the child becomes 50 and the parent is 80, still who's greater? The parent. The parent. And we know this from Biri Walidain, being obedient and dutiful to the parents. We know this from the issue of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala saying, you live to see one of them or both of them in old age. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Don't say to them what they don't like. Don't say to them what's wrong. Don't say to them what's repugnant. Don't say to them that which is disrespect and disobedience. وَلَا تَنْحَرْهُمَا. Neither do you shun them or turn your back or leave them. They're greater than the child. But in this case, when you're commanding your Lord, it's out of being destitute. Such as the dua and the etiquette of dua of our Prophet. One of the etiquette of dua is to raise the hands. When you make dua, this means you call Allah's name or you ask Allah something. This is considered dua. If you say Allah, that's dua in Arabic. You just called Allah's name. If you say Allahumma gfirli, or Allah forgive me, you asked Him something, but it's still dua because you called Him, you called out to Him. So the Prophet at times will make Allah's name proclaim and ask things, and he wouldn't raise his hands. At other times, he will raise his hands. And one of the ways he raised his hands was like this above his head. Yamuddu yani yadehi. Yamuddu yadehi foka ruts. He will raise his hands above his hands. What do you think this signifies? This signifies that he's begging. Like when you say, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. It's in the command form. You're commanding Allah, but your command is begging to your Lord. Like, please guide me to the sirat al-mustaqim. If you don't, I'm going to be ruined. Please guide me now. I'm on the sirat al-mustaqim every moment of being upon the Muslims. It's the issue of ubudiyah, servitude. And these things may seem basic, but you find the scholars of the past and the present writing books about this, volumes, and sometimes small essays with something that is small, but the impact is big. Such as the great statement, Manhaj Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, Na'budullah lillah, wa billah, wa fillah. A profound statement that the Imam Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen wrote for the Ummah. And of course, he didn't just think of it like they say Einstein and wrote. No, he got it from the people of the past and their recordings and their writings, and then he wrote it and they explained it for us like a spinning door. The belief of the Muslims never changed. except that we change it upon falsehood. The mannerisms, the methodologies of the Muslims never change, except that we change it on falsehood. So the way of the people that followed the Prophet, and they gathered together to practice that sunnah of the Prophet, one of their ways they worship Allah lillah, he said. Ya'budullah lillah. Or na'budullah lillah. We worship Allah lillah. Billah wa fillah. Lillah here, as Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala said in Surah Tabayyina, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And we have not been commanded, Allah said, those human beings, Bani Adam, they have not been commanded except that they worship Allah. مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Sincerely for Him alone in the religion. This is the meaning of lillah. Your worship is only for Allah. Not for riyah, not for showing off. Wala sum'ah, not for, being the one, he's the mic man, he's always speaking, he's speaking. Not for the issue of dunya. And we clarify all the time. If a person is working in a capacity as a teacher on these days, something tied to religious affairs, it's okay if the understanding is someone needs him to do it for them and they pay him a wage. But when we say for dunya, we mean that the issue is all about money. And it's not to give the people that which is direction that they need. It's simply about money. So if it's clearly a plan to deceive the Muslims, you go with that. Why? Because it's about money. If it's clearly an issue of doing something totally wrong and you give it to the people as if it's right, no problem, you go with that. Why? Because it's about what you put in your pocket. There's no limitation when it comes to obeying Allah, disobeying Allah. This is what we mean when we say for worldly affair. Meaning it's strictly for what you gain out of it in this life. Has nothing to do with accountability and what you gain or what you may be held accountable for in the hereafter. So lillah, as the Shaykh is mentioning here, means ikhlas and lillah. Only in line with what Allah revealed, how Allah intended for it to be understood, in line with how the Prophet explained it. Lillah means that you know if it's from the religion before you do it. If it's halal, haram before you do it. If it's something that's halal but it may cause a lot of harm, then you leave it. As this is part of what's haram. Even though the origin of something is okay, if that thing that's okay is going to cause a catastrophe, it becomes haram. Just like if something is halal and you're going to use it, but it's going to become a harm for you. Scholars of fiqh, they mention it becomes haram. And likewise, if something is haram under certain circumstances, which means you have no other choice, that you can't live without it, or you can't make it because there's no other way, then that thing which is haram becomes for that individual halal. So when we talk about lillah, you have to know these things before you deal or take a part in things in the daily life, the religious life, in order to worship Allah, lillah, for Allah. Not for the people, not for the fame, not for the desire, the feeling good or self-sufficient, or for things that are, as we mentioned, totally for this life, has nothing to do with the hereafter. Then you have that which he said, billah. And this is the point we made in the khutbah, the guidance. Here, billah, bi mu'inihi subhanahu wa ta'ala, with Allah's assistance. This ba, such as in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The word is ismu, and then you have Allahu, then you have ar-Rahmanu, Then you have Ar-Rahimu. That's the origin of the statement. Ismu Allah. Ismullahi, the name of Allah. Mudaf, mudaf ilayh. Meaning it's relative, the name to Allah. They go together. Then you have Ar-Rahmani, Ar-Rahimi. Where does the ba come in and why? That ba, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya said, this ba in the Arabic language, al-ba'u al-ista'ana. This ba signifies you're seeking Allah's help in whatever that you're getting ready to do. And that's why Allah's name is mentioned there in Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim for emphasis with His mercy for all of the creation and the special mercy for the believers. So this issue, when the Shaykh said, Lillah, you worship Allah for Allah, in accordance with Allah's revelation and seeking His reward. Billah, with Allah's assistance. You always seek Allah's assistance. Never feel self-sufficient. Walau anta aqna nas. Even if you be the most wealthy of people, like Donald Trump and these other people that they feel that their wealth is the thing that makes them sufficient. Do you feel that what they have accomplished of financial stability and gain is the thing that makes them who they are? But it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave them that ability, and it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can take that ability. So this billah, with the assistance of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. We say Allahu musta'an. Some people say Allah musta'een. La, it's musta'an with a medda. Allah is the one you seek His assistance. This is the meaning of billah. And then the Shaykh, he said, wa fillah. Fillah here, fi adillatillah, with the evidence of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Many of the scholars of the past have written books about the issue of the knowledge, the level and the status of the knowledge, the level of the one who has the knowledge, the issue of having actions without knowledge and actions with knowledge, such as the meaning of ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim. As we conclude and we wind down, many of the scholars have mentioned that in the Al-Fatiha, the Maghdub, they are the Jews. The Maghdub, they are the Yahud. It's clear, they are the Yahud. Maghdub from the word ghadaba, that Allah is upset with them. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upset with them? Because they had knowledge. Allah revealed to them knowledge. Many messengers came to them. Many people came as a warner and a bearer of glad tidings. And they took that knowledge and act as if they didn't have it. As Allah said, they threw it behind their backs. So this is an example of makdub, how you earn the anger of Allah. Makdub, showing the one who has this title, Ismu Maf'ul, the one who's affected by the anger of Allah, Makdub. He's earned the anger of Allah. He is the one that Allah is angry with. And the simple reason behind it, because of having something of knowledge and you don't practice. Then you have wala dhalun, and those that are astray. The ulama, they mention of tafsir, these are the Christians. You can find this in Ibn Kathir, Tafsir Imam al-Tabari, Tafsir Imam al-Qurtubi, any of the famous tafsir. When you talk about the Muslims, some of the ulama have mentioned a great line of poetry showing that, again, even though we have accepted Islam, Allah's guided Siratul Mustaqim, we still ahaqqa bi hadi Allah. We are in more need of Allah's guidance now than before. Because when a person is not guided, maybe he thinks he's guided, or maybe he knows I'm not guided. But when you have accepted Islam, a person could think, that's it. I accepted Islam and I don't have to do any deeds. Allah has forgiven me, and do all things fall into all type of errors that still lands him or her in the fire forever. So here, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, wala dhalin, these are the Nasara. And they are the ones, they're opposite from the Jews. The Jews have knowledge, they don't act on it. The Christians, they act, but they don't have the knowledge. Act on bid'ah, things that are not from their religion. Act on that which is inhiraf, that which is deviation from what they had of the straight path. So some of the scholars have mentioned, like the likes of Abdullah ibn Mubarak, من فسد من علمائنا ففيه تشبه من اليهود. Whoever has knowledge from the scholars of the Muslims and he doesn't practice it. And we want to even bring this down to the layman. Here it says ulama'u. We understand this means the person has like high level scholastic knowledge and so forth. But it applies to everybody who has something, he's held accountable for that knowledge. So one from the Muslims, he has knowledge, he knows it, he understands it, it's clear, it's not no misconception, but he doesn't practice that knowledge, then he shares and part of imitating the Jews. He's like the Jew in that regard. وَمَنْ فَسَدَ مِنْ عُبَادِنَا فَفِيهِ تَشَبَّ مِنَ النَّصَارَى. And whoever does worship that's fasted, meaning he doesn't have it accepted by Allah because he doesn't have an evidence to support it. As the ibadah requires evidence. You have to have knowledge before you worship Allah in any way. If you don't have a text for this type of worship, you can't do it. It's not accepted. Where when you talk about the worldly things that don't have anything to do with ibadah, worship, you can do it unless something prohibits you. But when you talk about salah, zakah, how to pray, and all of these other things, you have to have a text from Allah telling you that you have to do it and how to do it. You have to have a text from the messenger that you have to do it and how to do it. So here the scholars, they mention whoever is tainted in his worship in this regard, meaning he puts the worship first like the Jews without knowledge, then he shares in a portion of being like them in that regard. He shares. And this just shows that some of the issues that the Muslims suffer from customarily, like for example, we mentioned the issue that is widespread in this country or that country. People say, well, this is what they do in Algeria, or this is what they do in Mecca, or all of the Muslims are doing this. But this doesn't mean that it's right. It's customary. Like for example, the issue that we find the people doing with the adhan. They call the adhan, and we mentioned this before, me and some brothers in some of the lessons. The Prophet ﷺ, the people came and they complained to him about the reward that the mu'adhin he has. Because the mu'adhin, the one who calls the adhan, he has a great reward in this life and in the hereafter. He has intercession from Allah. He's going to have a high status. His neck is going to be tall. All of these things. So the Prophet said to that one, comforting him and giving him a great reward, he said, إِذَا قَالَ مُؤَذِّنَ اللَّهُ أَكْبَرُ اللَّهُ أَكْبَرُ. When the mu'adhin says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, meaning, and you hear him, فَقُلْ Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, then you repeat after him. And everything is left out of the worry that you don't have a reward, because the Prophet is giving you how to obtain your reward. You're not the mu'adhin, but repeat after the mu'adhin. And of course, when the Prophet mentioned Hayya ala salat of the mu'adhin, Hayya ala falah, he told the one who hears it to say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah on those statements. Then he told them, and then